Chapter 11. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Quiet. Everything froze. Time and space seemed to stop, the world itself seemed stunned by the words, "Hey, can you come down? My neck's killing me looking up at you." Asterisk gulp, star, the sound came from Grey, the youngest of the Valkyrie sisters, maybe 12 or 13, she was sure everyone could hear her swallow. Apparently, the Babylonian god Anu heard it too, because he glanced her way. That one look sent a chill straight down Grey's spine, like death was breathing on her neck. Maybe Anu had noticed them outside of time and space, and suspected they were up to something, which was giving Gilgamesh all this confidence. The sky god Anu started laughing, shaking the whole area, and soaking Grey's clothes with cold sweat. Terrified, she clutched at her sister Brunhilde's clothes. Brunhilde was sweating too, looking just as nervous. Is this just arrogance from ignorance, or is he so defiant he'll never back down no matter what? That is his ego inflated from killing the bull of heaven. Does he think God's no big deal? Because if he does, he's clueless. The bull of heaven and Anu aren't even in the same league. Of course, Brunhilde didn't think this wise king was truly ignorant. He must have some plan to deal with Anu, but what could it be? She couldn't even guess, though. Even if Gilgamesh couldn't win, he'd never give up his pride, he'd never submit, no matter how strong his opponent. That was the arrogance of the human king. Gilgamesh saw that Anu had no intention of coming down, no way he'd do that. So, Gilgamesh threw a chain at him. It was a silver chain, weighted on both ends with odd-shaped wedges. He was trying to lasso Anu with it. Anu just watched it come, contemptuous. At that distance, even if Gilgamesh could throw it straight, so what? It would probably just bounce off his divine power. No, more likely it would be obliterated instantly by his aura. It would shatter like glass on impact. In Anu's eyes, it was just a pathetic attack from an ant, but that's not what happened. The chain wasn't destroyed. Instead, it instantly wrapped around Anu, seemingly drawn in by his own power. The sky god was stunned. "He's tied up," Brunhilde gasped. Was Anu letting it happen, playing with Gilgamesh? No, because Anu looked genuinely shocked. He seemed to lose all his divine power, plummeting from the sky and slamming into the ground with a painful thud. Normally, a god couldn't be killed by a fall like that. Their bodies were protected by divine power. Even without divine power, the fall shouldn't be fatal, but it would still hurt. Can those chains imprison a god's power? Brunhilde whispered in disbelief. Something that could bind a god. The main god of a pantheon, helpless, captured like that? It had to be some kind of artifact, and Anu had fallen right onto Gilgamesh's altar, smashing the stone floor just a few yards away. Gilgamesh walked toward him, a chilling smirk on his face, holding a spear that looked stained with blood. Anu struggled against the chains, panic in his eyes, but the harder he pulled, the tighter they seemed to get. Anu could sense the threat of death from the spear. Reaching the edge, Gilgamesh raised the blood-red spear, its aura ominous. "You think this spear can pierce you?" That even as he said it, he plunged the spear down. The point pierced Anu's heart, pinning him to the ground. Blood gurgled from Anu's mouth. He tried to speak, but couldn't. His body convulsed, then went still. "Eep!" Grey clamped her hand over her mouth, eyes wide. Could a main god really be killed so easily? Was this some kind of illusion, Anu toying with Gilgamesh? But the god's body didn't vanish. Blood flowed, and the body cooled. He was really dead. He actually killed him like that, Brunhilde whispered, as if in a dream. She'd expected an epic battle between gods and humans, not an instant kill. Was this a joke? It was like Gilgamesh was the god, and Anu the human, their roles reversed. That spear couldn't be ordinary. Even a human weapon that damaged a god's body couldn't kill them, especially their soul. But here, it was obvious that the soul was gone too. As a Valkyrie, she could feel that Anu was truly dead. This altar seemed made for the sky god's demise. It was where he died, his blood staining the stone red. Brunhilde trembled. She was afraid of Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, but she was also thrilled. This was the man she had been looking for. Ha 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 ha. I hit the jackpot, Grey. Gilgamesh, if he fights, humanity might actually be safe. Sister Brunhilde. Seeing her sister like this made Grey uneasy. Did she really want to pick this king? He was too terrifying. So terrifying she almost lost it, the first human in history to kill a main god, Gilgamesh. Chapter 12. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The red pupils narrowed slightly, the motionless reflection of his body burned into them, blood gushed from the chest wound where the red spear had pierced through, staining the stone slab crimson. Had he really just killed a god? Like, actually killed him? Honestly, when he'd chucked the chains of heaven, he wasn't even sure they'd work on the gods of this world, but judging by the results, yeah, they definitely worked. Look at the chains of heaven binding Anu, the sky god. They'd been taut, like they were strangling him, but now they hung loose. The spear in his hand, now stained a sinister red, looked incredibly ordinary, like some metal spear someone had painted red. That's because both items had lost their noble phantasm mojo. This was the reward for hitting 90% completion, the one-shot noble phantasm, chains of heaven, and the one-shot, spear that pierces mortality. He'd gotten a ding when he hit 50%, progress at 50%. Reward, one time use noble phantasm, chains of heaven. Just one time. Then, at 90% : progress at 90%. Reward, one time king's treasure, that he'd been psyched until he saw the rest. Randomly selected noble phantasm from the king's treasure, spear that pierces mortality. Talk about anticlimactic. It sounded powerful, but the description was vague as hell. People always said spearmen were lucky, and he wondered if that luck was a curse in disguise, but after looking closer, it wasn't Siu Chulinski Balg. It was Shaka's god-killing spear. Why Shaka's spear got pulled from the king's treasure instead of Gungnir? Your guess is as good as mine. So, having offed Anu, how was his progress now? Current progress, 99.9%, seriously frustrating. It was like a download stuck at the very end, and the only reason he'd been able to kill a god so easily was because Anu was arrogant enough to let himself get chained in the first place. Huh. Another guest. Things just got complicated. If they'd shown up with the sky god initially, he could have better utilized the weapon's ability instead of simply using it to pierce a body. Just then, multiple figures appeared in the sky, the other Babylonian gods, slowly approaching. Dead silence. They had kept their distance out of the sky god Anu's furious presence. After sensing that something was amiss, they finally approached. They were greeted by a scene that scrambled their minds. The main god Anu, who had just been unleashing endless divine power, lay dead on the earthly altar, taken down by a human with chains, then impaled like a lamb to the slaughter. Humans killed a god. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. But, how else could they explain what they were seeing? Did Anu suddenly catch a case of the vapors, letting Gilgamesh get lucky? Are you kidding me? That was their main god, and he died like that at the hands of a human. This was a massive blow, a profound humiliation, and a cosmic joke. Their pupils shrunk. Then they noticed the giant pot on the altar. Was that beef stewing in it? God, the bull of heaven, that they were actually cooking the bull of heaven? Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, had truly gone insane. No wonder Anu was so pissed. King of Uruk, what have you done? That the sharp, hoarse voice belonged to Ishtar, a goddess. Even her voice trembled. Likewise, her body shook. Was it fear, or rage? Probably both. Gilgamesh just smirked. Something happened. As you can see, this king simply killed one of your losers. Is that any reason to throw a fit? That the flippant tone and casual dismissal sent shivers of rage down the gods' spines. His arrogance was infuriating them. They wanted to throttle the human standing before them, but without understanding the situation, they hesitated. They couldn't believe Gilgamesh had killed Anu on his own. Maybe some other god had secretly helped him. If they attacked without knowing, they might fall into a trap. There was definitely something fishy about those chains and that spear. They weren't human-made, not in the way humans think of weapons. They scanned the surroundings carefully, but nothing seemed out of place. Their eyes returned to the figure on the altar. Gilgamesh had already seated himself on the throne, perched on the throne 10 meters high, he should have been looking up at the gods. And yet, his fearless, arrogant aura made the gods feel as though the altar was higher than the sky. They were looking up at this aloof king, he was just a human, yet they, as gods, were having this illusion. It shocked them, shamed them, and enraged them. In the next second, terrifying divine power surged through the world, a signature of their divine system. Another main god, Marduk, had arrived. Marduk fearlessly appeared on the altar next to Anu's body, grabbing the weapon that had killed the Lord. What? Marduk looked stunned. The blood-stained spear felt utterly ordinary, something any human could forge. How could this be? Such a simple weapon couldn't possibly kill Anu. Even stripped of his divine power, his body was nearly impenetrable, and even if it had pierced his body, how could it destroy the soul of a god? He summoned the chains to his hand. They felt like any ordinary chain. What have you done? King of Uruk, who is helping you? This was too bizarre. Anu, killed by a mortal weapon. Completely destroyed, reduced to cosmic dust. No resurrection possible. The deed was done. I won't repeat myself. As for who helped me? Why would this king need help from anyone? His arrogant, disdainful attitude didn't sound like a lie. This human king was insufferable. Knowing he wouldn't get anything useful, Marduk's face hardened. Instantly, apocalyptic lightning crackled across the sky, coalescing into a spear of divine punishment. Chapter 13. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If it weren't for the flashes of lightning, the world would be plunged into utter darkness. A leaden black cloud threatened to descend and crush the earth. The thunderclaps were deafening, enough to make anyone dizzy. Thousands of lightning bolts converged above the king of Uruk's head. They coalesced into a spear of judgment, its color shifting from white to dark blue, and finally to black, the color of death, signaled divine punishment. Even seen across the barrier of time and space. This divine retribution made Grey, watching from afar, tremble, and her legs felt weak. If she hadn't been clinging to Sister Brender's clothes for support, she would have collapsed. Is this the wrath of God? If she were in the same place at the same time, she would have crumbled under the pressure, tears streaming down her face, but she and Sister Brend were separated by time and space. She was no longer immersed in a holographic image, but watching a two-dimensional scene on a screen. It was like Akasha viewing the screen. She avoided holographic images to prevent detection and unnecessary trouble. Before launching Twilight of the Gods, Brunhilde wanted to keep her chosen team secret. She was planning a major surprise for those god-forsaken gods. Looking at the screen, Brunhilde frowned. If that black divine punishment struck, it would obliterate not just the body but the soul itself, like the sky god Anu. Any resurrection attempts would be futile, preventing her from summoning King Gilgamesh to participate in Twilight of the Gods. Damn it, Brunhilde thought, biting her thumb in frustration. As Lord God Marduk waved his hand, the black judgment fell as if tearing through space. Brynhilde clenched her fists, her heart pounding. The black spear hurtled toward Gilgamesh, who made no attempt to evade it. Was he confident it couldn't harm him? Or did he have something else in mind? Then, the black lightning struck him, seemingly absorbed and vanished, as if nothing had happened. A wave of relief washed over Brunhilde, but her expression froze before she could even register the feeling. Gilgamesh's body dissolved like dry ice, transforming into a skeleton in an instant. A cracking sound echoed across the screen. The skeleton was riddled with black fissures, and with a snap, it shattered into countless sand-like fragments, turning black, then crushing into powder. But it wasn't over. A semi-transparent human figure, the soul, was engulfed in black flames. The soul was consumed like fuel, like the last drops of oil in a lamp. Anyone else would have screamed in agony, their soul twisting into a grotesque shape, but this human-shaped torch remained motionless, still sitting upright. Others deserve punishment too. Yes, these humans dare to look upon us. The other gods demanded that Gilgamesh's people be punished as well, so he could witness the consequences of his arrogance. At these words, the motionless soul torch suddenly raised its head, unleashing a wave of murderous intent that made the air itself tremble. This intent, capable of tearing the sky, sent shivers down the gods' spines. Some, unable to withstand the pressure, nearly fell from the sky. Only a helping hand prevented a complete embarrassment. Damn it, damn Gilgamesh. Ishtar, the one who had incited the humans, felt particularly terrified. She was guilty, yet he still glared at her, a candle in the wind about to be extinguished. Ha ha ha, you can try, King Uruk chuckled. I'll repay you 1,000,000,000 times over. His voice wasn't loud, but it resonated through the world, filled with a courage that could shake the very heavens. The churning dark cloud seemed to be shocked into stillness by his resolve. He was a man of iron will, someone who would never compromise his people, even if faced with brutal death. His ruby eyes, like guiding stars in the darkness, promised retribution 1,000,000,000 times over, if given the chance. Lord God Marduk frowned. Could King Uruk be resurrected? Impossible. He had clearly sensed the soul being burned to ash, fading into the universe. Even gods couldn't defy the laws of the universe. He refused to believe Gilgamesh, a mere human, could be brought back. Initiating next roll. Countdown, 5. The system notification allowed the king of Uruk, Gilgamesh, Bayu, to settle back onto his throne. He checked the progress and saw that the card owner was still at 99.9%. Had he failed? Not exactly. The last 0.1% required waiting until the modern millennium to determine if his deeds had survived. If his legend endured, the progress bar would complete. What if his deeds were erased during that time? Would it mean failure? Hard to say. If he could keep playing with time, he would have considerable control. He could revive the forgotten history as a legend. Hey, don't get stuck on the number 1 during the countdown, or my soul really will burn out. The countdown reached 0, and he felt a familiar sensation of something being taken from him, the same feeling as death. What character will I play next? He looked forward to it. He sensed something interesting was about to happen. Chapter 14. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The throne on the altar dissolved into cosmic dust, then the throne itself crumbled, and the altar was swept away by a gust of wind. Was this the end of King Gilgamesh? Hold on, something's not right. Huh? What is it, Brand? According to the history we all know, Gilgamesh died of old age. If he's dead now, it'll create a massive paradox. Brunhilde tapped her chin thoughtfully, fast-forwarding the scene. What was going on? As the scene sped up, Brunhilde gasped. So that's what happened. The Babylonian myth had created a man named Enkidu, initially presented as Gilgamesh's friend. Later, Enkidu replaced Gilgamesh as ruler of Uruk, subtly altering the accepted history. Why didn't the gods just rewrite human memories? Because altering memories on such a scale would be a blatant interference in human history. Other pantheons visiting Earth would notice the anomaly. Besides, the original prediction stated that Gilgamesh had a huge influence on Uruk and surrounding city-states. Humans in other pantheons had heard of him. His sudden death would raise too many questions, so, the Babylonian pantheon created Enkidu to replace Gilgamesh, framing Gilgamesh's disappearance as a divine punishment. Therefore, the people of Uruk believed Gilgamesh had merely suffered divine wrath, not death. Then, decades later, when other gods visited, Enkidu was in power. The original god-slaying incident was dismissed as a fable, downplayed through subtle ideological influence. Other pantheons simply didn't believe such a thing had happened. They had no idea that one of the Babylonian pantheon's main gods had been killed by a human. It was a humiliating secret. Naturally, they didn't want other pantheons to know, or they'd be ridiculed relentlessly. After completing his mission, Enkidu, the substitute, was welcomed into heaven by the gods and became a so-called demigod. That's why this fake Gilgamesh was never seen in heaven. He was likely confined to the Babylonian pantheon's domain. They were probably afraid that too much contact with gods from other pantheons would expose the truth. So, how did King Gilgamesh kill the sky god Anu? Rubbing her temples, Brunhilde muttered, her head aching. Even time-traveling gods from the Babylonian pantheon couldn't find anything amiss. If other gods had examined Gilgamesh's chain and spear right after the sky god died, they would have noticed something, but by then, the noble phantasm's one-time effect had worn off, and it was just an ordinary weapon. Even if you traveled through time and touched it, it would just feel like any other weapon. How did he do it? Brunhilde bit her thumb in frustration. If only she knew the method of killing a god. and to find out, she'd have to ask Gilgamesh himself. Unfortunately, Gilgamesh had become dust in the universe, impossible to summon, even going back to when Gilgamesh was alive wouldn't work. The real Gilgamesh was dead, and the image from history was just that, an image. Wait, something was wrong. Brunhilde felt she was missing something, something important. Brand, are you thinking of going back to the past? Even for us, Gilgamesh is established history. Any interference would be corrected. Besides, Gilgamesh is incredibly perceptive. He can sense us watching him across time and space. He might just kill us on sight, so. Gray stopped, startled. Brunhilde had suddenly grabbed her shoulders. What did you just say, Gray? Huh? That Gilgamesh might attack us? Not that part. What did you say before? Brunhilde felt she was on the verge of understanding, and the answer was in Gray's words. Before that? That Gilgamesh is really perceptive and can sense us watching him across time and space. Gray shrank back. Brand looked scary, and her grip was a little too tight. That's it. You're right. He can sense us watching him, ha ha ha. Finally understanding, Brunhilde smiled, a huge smile. The gods had missed it. They were too arrogant, careless, or just plain stupid. What's wrong, Brand? Gray looked worriedly at her sister's strange smile. Was the stress of competing with the gods getting to her? You're amazing, Gray. You just helped me realize something incredible. Huh? Incredible? Gray tilted her head, confused. Yes. It's this. Brunhilde's eyes gleamed. It's what? King Gilgamesh didn't truly become dust in the universe. Huh? Dust in the universe? I don't get it. Like the sky god Anu, after death, any resurrection method is useless. Her younger sister didn't grasp the full power of the divine punishment, which could completely erase someone. Gray still naively believed Gilgamesh could be warned or summoned. Well, now that she knew what was wrong, summoning him might be possible. What was wrong? Gilgamesh could sense them watching him across time and space. Logically, after the divine punishment, Gilgamesh should have completely ceased to exist. The image they were watching should have been a pure historical recording, but a pure image couldn't detect them. Since he could detect them, it meant one thing: Gilgamesh hadn't completely turned to dust. His body might have been destroyed, but his soul still existed in the universe. Ha ha ha. As long as the soul existed, he could be summoned, and wow, it had already taken so long to decide the first person. At this rate, it'd take forever. They'd have to launch the Twilight of the Gods battle after finding 2 or 3 more, but first, she had to try summoning Gilgamesh. Let's get started. Chapter 15. You are listening at novelfull.audio. With fists tight, Gray nervously eyed Sister Brunda in front of her. The sister activated the summoning system, ready to call forth the first of the 13 champions to fight against the gods. The first to be summoned was identified as Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, from the early Sumerian dynasty. This was a human who had defied the gods, slain the bull of heaven, and even taken down Anu, the Babylonian sky god. To say he killed gods was a massive understatement. Gray was terrified that the moment he arrived, they'd be attacked and killed simply for being associated with the divine. To save humanity, Sister Brunda was putting her own life on the line to summon King Gilgamesh. Brunhilde, also worried that Gilgamesh might suddenly lash out, instructed Gray to stay by the door. If anything goes wrong, get out of here. No one can leave or enter the room without special permission. Here we go. Brunhilde, standing before the summoning system, took a deep breath. Gilgamesh was known to hate gods, making Gray's concerns all too real. With the time-space coordinates locked, Brunhilde looked at the image panel and stretched out her hand. Confirm summon. The panel blazed with light, and then a regal aura, demanding obedience, filled the room. Brunhilde instinctively recoiled, bracing for an attack. She watched closely, expecting chains to lash out, knowing she couldn't withstand them. After all, these were chains that could bind a god, and she was just a Valkyrie, a demigod. Then, with a flash, a figure materialized. The young man, with blonde hair and crimson eyes, radiated arrogance. He was momentarily taken aback by his surroundings, then looked around with amusement. when his gaze landed on Brunhilde, she felt a chill, his red eyes burned like an ominous star, radiating killing intent. Instinctively, Brunhilde braced herself. Hey, why so tense? I'm the one who should be nervous, Gilgamesh said casually. He seemed harmless, yet Brunhilde felt the oppressive killing intent intensifying. Being suddenly yanked here is a bit unnerving. Oh. Checking to see if I'm a threat? Afraid I might just snap. Gilgamesh smirked, then nonchalantly strolled over to the nearest chair, lounging back with his legs crossed. Was this nonchalance overconfidence? I apologize. I'm just worried you might, she said. Making me sound like a bloodthirsty maniac. Gilgamesh chuckled, eyeing the forthright woman before him. Her demeanor suggested a seasoned warrior, a true Valkyrie. Valkyrie? A god? Interesting. He had been about to begin the next roleplay, but he was suddenly pulled here. At the same time, a message flashed in front of him, next roleplay suspended. Continue loading. He opted to wait and see. This summons likely wasn't malicious, otherwise, he would have been greeted very differently. Apparently, he wasn't deemed dangerous enough to warrant immediate capture. The woman's reaction suggested that she saw him as a threat, but she didn't seem hostile, and at the door, the little girl clutched her hands, terrified by a single glance. His gaze returned to the woman. You're a god. I felt someone watching earlier. It was you too, wasn't it? His crimson eyes flickered dangerously, causing Brunhilde to break out in a cold sweat. His presence was stifling. Though human, he exuded the same intimidating aura as the most formidable gods. We meant no disrespect, King of Uruk. But humanity faces an unprecedented crisis, and we need your help. Oh. Gilgamesh found this intriguing. Humanity facing the end? And they needed him. So what? You still haven't answered my question. I'm Brunhilde, the eldest of the Nordic Valkyries. She placed a hand over her chest and leaned forward slightly in introduction. Nordic Valkyrie. Interesting. How did figures from Norse mythology find me? Humanity is facing a crisis. One that is bigger than the gods can handle. On the contrary, the gods can handle it, because this human crisis comes from exactly the gods. The Valkyrie's face darkened, her eyes flashing with animosity. For millennia, the gods have convened every 1,000 years in the Valhalla Council, to decide humanity's fate, voting on whether to extend their existence for another millennium. In the 7-million-year history of mankind, on date X, month X, 20XX AD, all members unanimously voted for the end of humanity. Brunhilde explained the situation, carefully watching the king's reaction. He remained impassive, as if listening to a dull story that had nothing to do with him. Then, after a yawn, he said something that shocked Brunhilde. Honestly, I'd vote to wipe out humanity too. Chapter 16. You are listening at novelfull.audio. For ages, humanity has strived to build a better world, yet, human history is riddled with constant wars and bloodshed. Modern times have seen particularly insane world wars, ironically, or has fueled rapid advances in human civilization and technology, leading to the creation of weapons of mass destruction, including doomsday devices capable of wiping out humanity. Furthermore, the last century has witnessed severe damage to the world's ecology due to human development. Overfishing has choked the seas with garbage and oil pollution, turning once clear waters murky and devastating marine ecosystems. On land, forests have been decimated, and resources have been exploited uncontrollably. Lush mountain ranges have been transformed into barren rock, destroying animal habitats and driving species to extinction. In a way, humans have become a cancer to the planet and its creatures. So, after guiding humanity for countless years, he finally saw these results. It was like humanity was hopeless, like raising a child, pouring all your effort and love into them, hoping they'll become a pillar of society, but sadly, the child goes astray, refusing to change despite repeated warnings, leading to utter disappointment. They cause trouble, become a burden on society, and give you a headache. You just want to start over. Therefore, if you were also a member of the Valhalla Council, she would also vote for the endgame of humanity, and his answer shocked the Valkyrie Brunhilde. She thought he'd be on the side of humanity, but he chose the gods. After a moment of silence, she asked, King of Uruk, do you agree with the gods' decision to end humanity? Brunhilde looked at the man in front of her in disbelief. Gilgamesh, who seemed to hate the gods, actually agreed with their plan. He was siding with them. This was completely unexpected. Brunhilde couldn't help but smile wryly. The man before her was an enigma, so his answer wasn't entirely surprising. Yes, human history is a history of wars, and memories are always short, but what? As she spoke, Brunhilde sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The oppressive aura emanating from King Gilgamesh intensified. It felt as if the air itself was trembling under his presence. But the only ones who can end humanity are humans themselves. The gods. What are they? What right do they have to decide humanity's fate, based on their so-called guidance and care? Ha ha ha. King Gilgamesh now wore a mocking, disdainful smile. This gave Brunhilde a glimmer of hope. Are they really guiding and helping humanity out of kindness to bring humanity to a better future? Are they tired of playing house? Perhaps some gods genuinely care for humans, but based on the attitude he's witnessed, it seems most are simply playing games. That's interesting. Gilgamesh's card was 99.9% unlocked, but now it's fully unlocked. Does that mean he's in the future? And for the Valkyrie in front of him, for Brunhilde, he's a figure from the past, summoned to this time to save humanity, so, if he doesn't continue to the next role play and stays in this time, he can freely use Gilgamesh's abilities, but there's a catch. He can only use this character. Because he doesn't go to the next character, the second card won't appear, but if the next character isn't summoned, he'll have to wait millennia to unlock the card. That said, if he continues playing the role directly, there should be another version of himself in this timeline, right? What if they met? What would happen if they came into contact? Something bad might happen. Huh. He was flipping through the books on the table when certain words caught his eye. You're thinking about what would happen if you met another you, right? Let me tell you, it's possible we'd be forcibly fused into one person. If you were fused by me and stayed in modern times, then I wouldn't have done some of the things in history. The story of Gilgamesh would never be discovered, and other cards wouldn't activate. Then you wouldn't be able to see the activated card now. The text vanished, as if it had never been there. Just his imagination. It seems that in this future, he found a way to leave a message for himself. He closed the book and looked up at the Valkyrie. So, how are you going to stop the gods? What do you want me to do? That she couldn't possibly think he could take on all the gods alone, right? What was the point of summoning him? The Valkyrie's face turned serious. She spoke, I hope you, King of Uruk, will participate in Ragnarok. Ragnarok? As the Valkyrie explained, an interesting expression crept across his face. To prevent the gods from easily wiping out humanity, the Valkyrie had deliberately provoked them. She invoked Article 62, Item 15 of the Valhalla Constitution, which stipulated a one-on-one duel between gods and humans, and advocated for a final struggle between 13 gods and 13 humans. Known as the Battle of Ragnarok, if humans won 7 matches, they could survive until the next human survival and death conference. That's interesting. If humans win, they get to survive until the next conference on the survival and death of humanity. That's really a great mercy. Maybe we should have a conference on the survival and death of the gods. His arrogance was palpable, and Brunhilde gave him a searching look. Suddenly, the door burst open, or rather, it was kicked open, sending Grey tumbling to the ground. An arrogant figure strode into the room. P.S. Give me some flowers and vote for support. Chapter 17. You are listening at novelfull.audio. With a brutal kick, the door burst open, and Brunhilde was confronted by an arrogant figure. The man was decked out in flashy hip-hop gear and sported a delinquent vibe, complete with a pair of wings sprouting from his back. Brunhilde recognized him instantly. Incubus, a persistent nuisance who frequently harassed the Valkyries. Incubus, Brunhilde hissed. His real name was Incubus, a sleazy demon and complete scumbag. Seriously, the gods are such a cruel and stubborn bunch. Why would you put yourself in such a desperate position for humanity's sake? Ingeborg sauntered in, slicked back his hair with a flourish, and gave Brunhild a look of exaggerated concern. Then, he turned his attention to Gilgamesh, his face twisting with disdain. I overheard something about a meeting of life and death of the gods. Brunhild, what kind of garbage did you pick? His words were cutting, delivered with a condescending attitude that made Brunhild clench her fists, itching to punch him. He glanced at King Gilgamesh, who remained unfazed, a faint smile playing on his lips as if he hadn't even registered the insult. Wasn't he angry? Apparently not. He seemed to regard Ingeborg as nothing more than a clown, unworthy of his attention. This reaction clearly bothered Ingeborg, who frowned. Human, your look is getting on my nerves. Get on your knees and lick my boots clean, or I'll rip your eyes out. As he spoke, Ingeborg stuck out his long tongue, and a wave of pure evil rolled off of him. He expected to see the arrogant human flinch, break out in a cold sweat. The evil miasma carried a tormenting energy that would seep into the human's body, creating the sensation of being devoured by ants, excruciatingly painful. Instead, the human snapped his fingers. The space behind him seemed to warp, not violently, but like ripples spreading across a still pond, golden ripples. From these golden ripples, two figures materialized, each brandishing a dagger. Brunhild was shocked by this display, then a thrill of excitement shot through her. Was the mystery of King Gilgamesh about to be unveiled? Was she about to discover why he had killed the sky god Anu? Ha! King Gilgamesh chuckled softly, contemptuously. The daggers flashed, moving with impossible speed, leaving golden trails in their wake. The trails ended directly in front of the incubus, the sleazy demon Ingeborg. Ha! Why can't I see anything? Ingeborg cried out, a note of panic in his voice as if his vision had been abruptly stolen. The next second, his face contorted in agony. Aard, my eyes. It hurts so much. He clawed at his face, but his hands only encountered the hilts of the daggers embedded in his eyes. You damn human, I'll. He started to roar, but was cut off by a series of sharp impacts, the sounds of blades piercing flesh. Brunhild stared in horror at Ingeborg, his body now a pincushion riddled with spears, swords, knives, and halberds. Blood gushed from the countless wounds, turning him into a leaking water balloon. She sensed an extraordinary power emanating from the weapons, especially the crimson spear piercing his head. It seemed to be the same weapon that had slain the sky god, radiating a deadly aura that could kill a god. It was practically an artifact. He just tossed out a whole armory of artifacts. Silence descended upon the room, broken only by the sounds of blood flowing and dripping. The man who had caused this carnage didn't even glance at Ingeborg, as if he were a mere insect, not worth a second thought. Eep! Gray gasped, her eyes wide with terror. She clapped a hand over her mouth to stifle a scream. This King Gilgamesh was terrifying, a murderous tyrant. Even Brunhild was visibly shaken by the bloody scene, her face slick with sweat. Biting her lip, Gray steadied her trembling legs and stepped in front of Brunhild. You can't hurt Sister Brund. It wasn't her who summoned Ingeborg. Gray's legs were shaking so violently she was afraid they'd give out. King Gilgamesh turned to her, his gaze filled with amusement, making her heart leap into her throat with fear. Did you pee your pants? Ha! Gray was caught off guard. She glanced down in a panic, but saw nothing. When she looked up again, Gilgamesh was smiling, an evil smile that made her blush. Ragnarok, I see, he. Wait, hold on a minute, King of Uruk. Brunhild reached out, desperate to stop him. Light particles were swirling around his body, making him transparent. He was about to disappear, but she only grasped at air. King Gilgamesh had vanished, leaving only his echoing chuckle in the room. What just happened? Had he left the room? Or returned to the past? She immediately accessed the summoning system. The option to summon him was still available, so what was going on? Had King Gilgamesh chosen to stand aside, refusing to fight for humanity? Brunhild managed a wry smile. She wasn't exactly surprised, but she wouldn't give up that easily. When the games began, she would summon him again. She refused to believe that King Gilgamesh was completely uninterested in the contest. Besides, his lack of a direct answer didn't necessarily mean he had refused. He was a king, after all, arrogant and domineering. Would he simply agree to participate just because she asked? That would undermine his royal pride. To put it in modern terms, he was being a total tsundere. She decided to put it aside for now, deal with the troublesome corpse, and then start scouting for the next warrior. It was a great time to read books on May Day. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP points coupon. Grab a deposit now. Activity time, April 29th to May 3rd. Chapter 18. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Golden energy rippled, then a barrage of unreal weapons materialized. It looked like Gilgamesh had a whole armory crammed inside those golden ripples, but how did he get all that stuff? Unless he tells us, it's a mystery. Sis, look. Quick! Gray's shout snapped Brunhild back to reality. She followed Gray's gaze toward Ingeborg's. Could the guy still be alive? Turns out, no. Instead, golden ripples spread around the weapon sticking out of Ingeborg's like he was a pincushion, and then the weapons disappeared back into the ripples. Was this some kind of automatic recycling system that activated when Gilgamesh vanished? Brunhild immediately reached out to grab one of the weapons. Her hand passed right through the golden ripple without resistance, like it was a mirage. Then, the weapons themselves vanished like illusions. In the blink of an eye, all the weapons were gone, leaving only a body riddled with holes. Whoa! Gray watched her sister's actions with surprise. She casually stuffed Ingeborg's body into a garbage bag. Was she just going to toss him out with the trash? Gray, I'm taking out the garbage. Brand really didn't pull any punches. Gray's mouth twitched. Her sister was intense. Sometimes that intensity was a good thing. Sometimes, not so much. Gray was genuinely worried that Brund would accidentally get herself killed. With a helpless sigh, Gray followed, planning to keep an eye out. They walked out the door and into a seemingly endless corridor. Gray scanned ahead, watching for any other gods who might be coming. Okay, all clear. In a flash, they reached a spiral staircase. A terrifying aura made Gray tense. Who was it? She needed to warn Brenda ASAP. Spinning around, Gray smacked right into something soft. It was her sister's chest. Gray started to say something, but a figure caught in the corner of her eye froze her in terror. It was a red-haired woman with golden eyes. Just looking at the figure in white clothes, you could tell that he was incredibly powerful. Gray felt like her life was in danger. All her courage vanished, replaced by raw fear, and the most noticeable thing was the massive, uniquely shaped hammer he carried, the famous Thor's hammer. The figure was none other than the strongest in Norse mythology, the god of thunder, Thor. Gray was frozen stiff with fear. Lord Thor. Brunhild, who'd been so arrogant at the meeting of the gods, dropped her usual bravado and bowed respectfully. Gray wanted to salute too, but the terror radiating from the infamous god paralyzed her. She could only break out in a cold sweat. Was this provocative? Would he just smash her with the hammer and turn her into a meat pie? Thor seemed to ignore them and kept walking, making Gray sigh with relief. Then, he stopped dead in his tracks, making Gray's breath catch in her throat. What's happening? Did her attitude really piss him off? Brunhilde, what are you doing? The cold voice sent a shiver down Gray's spine. He noticed the body in her sister's bag, didn't he? Gray nearly fainted. How could he not notice? The bag was torn, revealing a bloodied and grotesque head. Brand must have been dragging the bag instead of carrying it, leaving an obvious trail of blood. That's why Thor had stopped. I'm throwing away this body. Brand's blunt reply made Gray want to disappear. Couldn't she have phrased that a little more delicately? Did you kill him? Though his tone was calm, Gray could feel the air trembling with tension. While I might want to kill Ingeborg, I'm aware of Valhalla's rules and wouldn't break them lightly. Gray sensed that Thor was losing patience and didn't want to hear any more of Brand's lies. A human killed Ingeborg. Brunhild blurted out the truth. The corner of her eye caught a flicker of change in Thor's expression. A human? The human you're looking for? Yes, and he was killed in an instant, with no chance to resist. Thor was silent, a terrifying silence. Then, lightning flickered around him, and the air twisted with immense divine power. In the next instant, the calmness returned. He'd suppressed his anger. Is that so? Very good. I don't know what you're planning, but I hope the humans you summon can entertain me. Otherwise, I'll kill you. With that, Thor swung his hammer, sending the bag and its gruesome contents flying. Don't make me wait too long. He turned and left. As soon as he was out of sight, Brunhilde let out a sigh of relief and wiped her brow. She looked calm, but she'd been plenty nervous. Phew, that was close. Sis, do you think Lord Thor will participate? A god that terrifying is unbeatable. Gray, slumped on the ground, worried about the possibility. Even though King Gilgamesh had been powerful and killed the main god Anu, she felt they stood no chance against the thunder god from Norse mythology. Yes, absolutely. And he'll be the vanguard for the gods. Based on her understanding of the gods, Brunhilde was sure Thor would be in the first round. The answer terrified Gray. This was a game they were destined to lose. The sisters returned to Akasha. What's wrong, sis? Someone got in. Brunhilde had been ready to continue searching for humans to fight the gods and eager to activate the Akasha system, but she felt someone else had used it while they were gone. Who? Could it be someone from the Babylonian pantheon? She wasn't sure, but they could check the surveillance. Walking to a hidden corner, Brynhildr pulled out a pinhole camera. The gods were too proud of the things created by humans, letting something so negligent pass them by. She put the memory card into the tablet. As expected, the person was recorded. However, it wasn't a god from the Babylonian pantheon, but from another mythological system. They were trying to mess with Akasha's records. They seemed afraid that she would find someone, which was interesting. And the intruder was one of the 4 supreme demon gods of a certain god system. Chapter 19. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The supreme 4 pillars are the 4 monarchs who rule the 4 directions among the 72 demon pillars. First, Baal, the top-ranked demon god. A king among the 72 pillars, he commands 66 legions and rules the east. Second, Baimen, the 9th-ranked demon god. Another king among the 72 pillars, he commands 25 legions and rules the west. Third, Astru, the 29th-ranked demon god, a duke among the 72 pillars, he commands 40 legions and rules the south. Fourth, Asmodeus, the 32nd-ranked demon god. A king among the 72 pillars, he commands 72 legions and rules the north. The figure captured by the security camera was Astru, the monarch ruling the south. This piqued Brunhilde's interest. Did one of the supreme 4 pillars have something to hide? Someone didn't want her finding someone, huh? Was it something like the Babylonian pantheon all over again? So, who was doing the hiding? It had to be connected to humanity somehow. Over the 7 million years of human history, who were the humans involved with the 4 supreme pillars? Who else could it be? A name sprang to Brunhilde's mind. Ha 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 ha. Sister Brand. Seeing her sister grinning so wildly, almost losing it, Gray worried. She must be under too much pressure. Isn't this just handing me the perfect candidate on a silver platter? Brunhilde said, grabbing her face, thrilled. First, someone from the Babylonian pantheon had slipped up, letting her uncover the anomaly that was King Gilgamesh. Now, the 4 supreme pillars were guiding her to someone else. Perfect. She opened the Akasha system and entered the name of this king who was also human. What had the 4 supreme pillars changed? What had they concealed? In the next instant, the relevant information appeared. What had been altered? What? Brunhilde's aquamarine eyes widened. Her usually composed face showed shock. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. The information was completely different from what she'd expected. Brunhilde had anticipated that the manipulated information would paint this king as ordinary, mediocre. Even if wise, he wouldn't be the kind of king who could stand on a battlefield. In short, history was overflowing with kings better than him. That's how the deception should have worked, leading her to dismiss him as not strong enough to be one of the 13 chosen. But instead, the information revealed was the complete opposite. This king's career story was nothing short of an outrageous legend, if it was to be believed. He was easily qualified to be chosen, honestly, aside from King Gilgamesh. Brunhilde couldn't think of anyone more qualified, so, should she summon him now, pull him from history? Gray, seeing her sister's reaction, peeked over her shoulder at the information. Sister, isn't this a little much? After skimming the general content, Gray also sounded disbelieving. The introduction was even more outrageous than King Gilgamesh's. Sister Brender, this might be a trap. It was so unreal, she thought. Brunhilde considered Gray's suggestion. It very well could be a trap. They deliberately created this exaggerated figure so that she'd eagerly choose him as one of the 13, then, at the twilight of the gods, he'd turn out to be all bark and no bite, leading to humanity's defeat. But wouldn't summoning the king expose the truth? Wouldn't the lie be obvious coming from his own mouth? Unless this king was a glory hound, someone who loved to brag and show off, a poser. Therefore, the Supreme Four Pillars' goal was to deliberately waste one of her slots. If that was the case, it was a truly despicable tactic, but was such a thing necessary? The gods were arrogant. Normally, they wouldn't bother with such petty tricks, unless there was an exception, like the Babylonian mythology, an anomaly like King Gilgamesh. So, what were they trying to hide? Was the sole purpose of pushing this human monarch forward simply to conceal the truth? After much deliberation, Brunhilde couldn't decipher the motive. In that case, it was time for her old reliable method, travel to that era and see for herself. Witness it firsthand. The information displayed might be fake, but the hologram-like viewing of the king's reign couldn't be faked. It was the true Akashic record. Of course, it was troublesome to be serious when cheating, okay? Brunhilde had read fake information before, almost identical to this, in a book. This fake information was basically a copy of the content in that book, and that book was called The Key of Solomon. Despite the name, it had no direct connection to King Solomon. It was written by mystically inclined humans in the Middle Ages. They drew from the King Solomon story and added a mythical flair. Basically, it was self-insert fan fiction created to satisfy their vanity and the desire to believe that humans could challenge myths. Excellent. She would see what truth was hidden behind this charade. She'd correct the time, go to the 9th century BC, and discover what the Four Pillars were concealing. Chapter 20. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the 9th century BC, a remarkable figure emerged within the Jewish royal family along the Mediterranean coast. This individual would hold a pivotal place in human history. King Solomon, also known as the King of Wisdom. Under his rule, the kingdom reached its zenith. His army was powerful, commerce flourished, and both the temple of God and a magnificent palace were built, solidifying his reputation as the greatest king of ancient Judea. Historically, Solomon ascended to the throne at the young age of 17. Driven by ambition, he solidified his power through strategic marriages. He married daughters and sisters of foreign kings, including the daughter of the Egyptian pharaoh, forging a strong alliance that significantly boosted his kingdom's influence. During his reign, he expanded the nation's borders, reaching the Euphrates River to the northeast, the Gulf of Aqaba to the southeast, and the borders of Philistia and Egypt to the southwest. But were these historical accounts accurate? Suddenly, words appeared before his eyes: current progress, 50%, acquired one-time skill, revelation. King Solomon, or Bayou, as he was also known, paused, momentarily stunned amidst his meeting. He recalled that activating this skill would allow him to hear the voice of heaven, guiding him to take the most optimal action. For example, when traveling, it would help him choose the best route. Essentially, anything he wanted to achieve would lead to the most favorable outcome. Suddenly, a dizzy spell overcame him, distorting his vision. One moment he was in the conference hall, the next he found himself in a vast, white temple. Sensing a presence, he looked forward. There stood a massive throne, upon which sat a colossal figure in white robes, radiating a brilliant holy light. Surrounding it were ethereal female figures, their graceful forms adorned with pure white wings. These were angels, beautiful and captivating, clinging to the central figure with undisguised fascination. This imposing figure, whose face remained indistinct, appeared to be the main god of this celestial system. "Solomon, what is your wish?" The god, holding his chin in one hand and a book in the other, gazed down with a voice that seemed gentle, kind, and humane. yet carried an undercurrent of aloofness and indifference. His gaze felt dismissive, like a casual glance at a roadside pebble. Solomon chose to respond. Wisdom, he stated simply. His calm demeanor, lacking any awe or admiration, seemed to stir a hint of displeasure in the aloof god. An excellent choice. I shall grant you unparalleled wisdom. To others, this would have been praise, a divine honor, but King Solomon sensed ridicule and malice beneath the surface. Malice? The next moment, the god waved his hand, and a golden light enveloped Solomon. Illegal program implantation detected. This program contains numerous subconscious suggestions. Clean up the illegal program that turns a zealous believer into a sorcerer. So, this was the malice he sensed. He had been right. These gods were merely playing games. If they truly wanted to guide humanity, would brainwashing be necessary? This god was simply bored, too lazy to finish the game properly, and resorting to a shortcut through brainwashing. But if he was tired of playing, why not just abandon it? Why bother with mind control to push him toward glory? The reason was simple: to prevent the humans in this mythology system from underperforming compared to others. It was a matter of pride and competition. As the golden light enveloped him, a book tumbled down in front of him. It wasn't a deliberate gift, the god's sweeping gesture had simply knocked it off his lap. As the book fell, its pages flipped open, revealing two specific pages that caught Solomon's attention. Then, another wave of dizziness struck, and his vision blurred once more. The white temple vanished, replaced by the familiar conference hall. The illegal program has been cleared. He barely registered the system notification, his head throbbing intensely. It felt like something was being forcibly crammed into his brain, like a raging fever, causing intense discomfort. Was this the aftermath of purging the illegal program? No, it was something more. The searing pain stemmed from activating his bonus skill, enlightenment. The moment he received the so-called wisdom, he had triggered revelation. Simultaneously, he focused intently on his deepest desire. The book's fall was a result of revelation, allowing him to glimpse the contents of those two crucial pages, which were directly related to his wish. One page contained a spell, a ritual to summon something. Under normal circumstances, even a lifetime of study wouldn't allow a person to grasp its meaning. However, under the effect of revelation, his brain was racing, performing complex calculations and deductions to decipher the spell. Yet, even that wasn't enough. Since it was a divine incantation, he still needed to figure out how to activate it using a human body. Your Majesty. Are you all right? King. The ministers were alarmed by his condition, especially the blood trickling from his nose. Quickly. I'm fine, he replied with effort, taking a deep breath and managing a smile. The calculation was complete. Activating the spell required access to a mysterious power previously beyond human reach, the realm of the gods. In short, through revelation, he had glimpsed the manipulation of phenomena in this world. Magic, excellent. He would conclude the meeting and begin preparations to successfully activate the spell. This was a technique to summon and control demons, a specific type of puppetry tailored for a particular demon.